The Matchmaker is a part of the game that can always be improved. It was changed completely several times during the 9 years of the game's life. Now it's time for new serious improvements.
The Matchmaker is one of the most important components of our game. It forms the teams, and it has to observe several conditions to make the battle interesting. They are creating comparable team compositions, selecting diverse types of vehicles, and using a variety of maps. The main requirement for the Matchmaker is to do it all quickly in order to send the player into battle faster.
In 2010, it was easier to implement. There were only about 20,000 players, 3 nations, fewer than 100 vehicles, and the players didn't have many Tier 9 and 10 vehicles. So to make the waiting time shorter, the Matchmaker could create battles with 5 tiers of difference. Can you imagine such battles today?
Gradually, more and more players research the top-tier vehicles. The lack of vehicles in the queue was no longer an issue. The Matchmaker could create battles with 3 tiers of difference. But there were exceptions. Many players remember this table.
Work on the Matchmaker continued. The developers restricted the number of SPGs to 5 per team, started to separately balance out light tanks and SPGs, created a rule for the number of platoon players in both teams. However, at the time, some issues remained unresolved. An imbalance of vehicle types between teams. For example, one team had 6 medium tanks and the other had 6 tank destroyers. Trolling or fail platoons in your team, which consisted of a mouse and 2 Tier 1 vehicles, for example. And arguably the most annoying issue, battles where the players didn't have a worthy opponent to fight.
Remember those battles when 4 Tier 8 vehicles were matched against only Tier 10 ones? The Tier 8 vehicles didn't want to play right from the start, as they didn't have anyone to fight.
The first iteration of the Matchmaker wasn't up to taking on these tasks. It simply didn't have the necessary tools. The Matchmaker needed a complete revamp and a new architecture to solve these problems.
Spring 2017 brought a new Matchmaker as part of Update 9.18. It improved the quality of battles and fixed most of the issues known at the time.
We introduced new restrictions. Platoons can now only be same tier, which fixed the issue of trolling or fail platoons. We decreased the number of SPGs to 3 per team, and most importantly, we introduced the template system, the main ones being 3, 5, 7, 5, 10, and battles with 15 vehicles of the same tier.
The templates have strict rules. There mustn't be more vehicles at the top of the list than in the middle. And there mustn't be more vehicles in the middle than at the bottom. This allows each player to have a worthy opponent in any battle. Even when you're playing at the bottom of the list, there are always enough vehicles of your tier that you can have a fair fight with. The game completely changed. The quality of battles improved, and the queue time didn't change.
The developers continued their work on the Matchmaker, regulated the team compositions. Now the number of vehicles of different tiers is equal for both teams, and the difference in the number of tank destroyers, SPGs, and light tanks must not be more than 1. Implemented matching tanks of similar playstyles. Now the Matchmaker tries to match the vehicles in such a way so that, for example, 2 heavy tanks with autoloaders would not play against 2 super heavy tanks, and lowered the probability of being bottom of the list as a platoon.
While we were improving the Matchmaker, the queue continued evolving and caused 2 important issues. The first problem, the players more often are at the bottom of the list, and they less frequently play against vehicles of their tier. This mostly affects Tier 8 and Tier 6 vehicles. The second problem, preferential matchmaking players mostly play the 5 to 10 format with higher tier vehicles, and rarely play against lower tier enemies. This rids them of their advantage. Those vehicles are designed to perform a bit worse in exchange for preferential matchmaking. These parameters make it harder for the preferential matchmaking players to fight same tier and higher tier vehicles.
Strict templates can't fix these issues because the queue completely changed and now looks absolutely different. To understand why it happened, we have to first understand how it works.
When a player selects a vehicle and clicks the Battle button, they are placed in a queue. Imagine a big waiting room that gradually collects vehicles of different tiers. It depends on the vehicle choice of thousands of players what vehicles end up in the queue. The queue changes all the time because of that. Different numbers of vehicles of different tiers are constantly added to it. The vehicles wait in this room until there are enough vehicles of the necessary tiers for the matchmaker to send them into battle. The waiting time depends on the number of players in the queue and on the tiers of the vehicles that they chose. After the matchmaker selected a template, took the appropriate vehicles from the queue, allocated the vehicles to the two teams and chose a map, it finally sends the players into battle. Before update 9.18, the queue and the vehicle ratio in the game looked something like this. There were 4 times as many Tier 8 vehicles as there were Tier 10 ones. With such a vehicle tier ratio, the main 357 template worked well and could quickly process the queue. In order to send Tier 10 vehicles into 3-tier battles, it needed to take some Tier 9 and 8 vehicles. The rest of the vehicles played battles at their respective tiers. Over the last 2 years, the queue and the vehicle ratio changed significantly. Now it looks like this. There are half as many Tier 10 vehicles as there are Tier 8 ones. There was also an increase in the number of Tier 9 vehicles. However, the number of Tiers 7 and 6 decreased. It so happened that the matchmaker now works in a completely new environment with its old tools. If it continues to send the same number of Tier 10 vehicles to battle, it will take twice as many Tier 8 ones. It means half of those Tier 8 vehicles will be playing at the bottom of the list. At the same time, if there are not enough Tier 8 vehicles, the matchmaker will send Tier 10s to same tier and 2-tier battles.
This is why the matchmaker creates such battles now. It turns out that the system is imbalanced. The matchmaker often sends vehicles to the bottom of the list. We want to change that. We analyzed these issues and figured out their causes. We tried different ways of solving them and conducted many tests in search of the new tools for the matchmaker.
The biggest challenge is that it's impossible to predict what the queue will look like tomorrow or in 6 months. But we know one thing for sure, it will constantly change. That's why we needed to find such tools that could quickly adapt to different changes in the queue.
One such tool will be dynamic templates. There will be many templates, but don't be afraid. The matchmaker will choose the appropriate template for different tiers based on the current state of the queue, and will try to balance the system out so that there are no apparent biases. The dynamic templates change the picture significantly. As soon as we change the template from 357 to 456 for Tier 10 vehicles, we decrease the number of Tier 8 vehicles that will play as bottom tier.
Yes, they will have to play some battles with 4 Tier 10 vehicles, but only for a small number of battles. The matchmaker will choose the appropriate template set for each tier based on the current state of the queue to balance the system in general. This is what the system looks like to the matchmaker.
Let's use an example. Take Tier 8 vehicles. A quarter of all battles are played in them. They have all 6 battle configurations. They play at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom of the list. Let's take a date, say the 11th of December. Considering the state of the queue that day, the current matchmaker would have to send the Tier 8 vehicles to the following battles. About 40% of the battles that Tier 8 vehicles played in featured Tier 10 ones, and about 20% of them were same tier and lower tier. If the new matchmaker would process this queue, the Tier 8 vehicles would have played half as many battles that feature Tier 10, and a lot more same tier and low tier battles. Basically, the number of battles with Tier 10 vehicles will decrease dramatically, and the number of battles with Tiers 6 and 7 will increase.
The queue will change every day, and it will continue changing in the future. But the new matchmaker with dynamic templates will be able to adjust to different queue changes. It can handle both a queue like this and a queue like that. It will try to choose such templates that will decrease the number of battles at the bottom of the list.
The new matchmaker will improve playing in vehicles with preferential matchmaking. Thanks to the dynamic templates, these vehicles will more rarely get into battles with higher tier vehicles. It will let them make better use of the preferential matchmaking.
Unfortunately, we can't fully test the new matchmaker anywhere but on a real server. Therefore, we will shortly add the new matchmaker to one of the RU servers after some tweaking and configuring. We will announce it at a later date.
We will focus on testing the stability and fault tolerance of the new matchmaker under real server conditions. We will also collect real data about vehicle distribution in battles. And we will, of course, tweak the template settings accordingly.
After the testing ends, we will collect the results and players' feedback. When we make sure the new matchmaker improves the quality of battles, we will launch it on other servers. This is the plan for the near future. Then, after we implement the initial algorithm, we will continue improving the matchmaker and the quality of the created battles.
We have many vectors of development. Some of them already exist as prototypes, others are still ideas. We will start working on the best of them and share our progress in the next Developer Diaries. Please follow the news, leave your comments, and good luck on the battlefield.